I'll be honest, I was gonna do a Scottie Barnes live anyway, because I was thinking about some stuff, and then Scottie Barnes goes out and does this. You gotta love the confidence from this young man.
Yeah, you want MVP, man. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try my best. I want it all. I'm trying to win everything. I want to make it to playoffs. I want to be MVP, first team defense, DPOY. I want it all. Like we striving for greatness this year, man. 100%.
Okay. Now, this kind of reminds me of something that Scotty said on draft night, which is he said he wanted to be one of the best players in the league. Now, there seems to be a very big divide between how the NBA world, Raptor fans see Scotty Barnes and how Scotty Barnes sees Scotty Barnes. Seems to be a pretty big divide between how ESPN projects Scotty Barnes, Bill Simmons projects Scotty Barnes, and how his trainer and his coaches see Scotty Barnes. On the one side, you got people calling him a super role player. He's saying, well, it's good he's going to have RJ and BI to play behind. That's one side. Then there's another side that says this guy's probably an MVP candidate. You got Vince Carter saying all this stuff. You got Magic Johnson saying, he reminds me of myself. He's just a very weird player. He is an incredibly polarizing player. Also, big shout out big shout out to Chuck Swirsky. If you have not checked out this interview, it is gonna put a smile on your face, especially if you are an OG Raptor fan. Please go check this one out. I don't know how well it's gonna do, given how this is August and we're in like the dog days of summer, and people don't usually care about basketball in August, and there's a lot more to care about in the city. But please just give this video at least a one watch through. It's 22 minutes. It's a light conversation about Toronto Raptors, Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, toxic media, culture, social media, how people have changed, NIL. We get into a lot of stuff in 22 minutes. It's a really succinct, well balanced interview in which you learn a lot more about Chuck and just his attitude towards basketball. So please definitely go check this video out. If you haven't already watched it, go check it out after. Go play it for your fish. Play it on loop. Put it as a repeat. Just rack up the views, bro. If you want this channel to be able to get more interviews, it matters that those interviews with guys like Nav Bhatia and Chuck Swirsky and so, that they actually do well. And I understand that I have a job as a content creator, so I'm trying to make these videos and these interviews as good as possible. But can y'all help a little bit by watching those videos? It would go a very long way, right? Like there's I want to say like there's a form of content which is clickbaity content, like Scottie Barnes issues a bold warning into the NBA. I mean, yeah, what he said is a bold warning, but sometimes it's not a bold warning. But the bold part, and the Raptors will never be the same again. That clickbaity content does tend to get a lot of views. It does tend to just jump up the algorithm. Whereas I find too often that sensible content that is just normal, not clickbaity, deep, doesn't necessarily get as much click through. So please definitely go check that one out. Appreciate y'all. Okay, so to this point of Scottie Barnes, first of all, break it down. Scottie Barnes, according to Vegas, I don't like to talk about betting, but Vegas, his odds of winning MVP are like 501 to 1. That is a nice way of saying Vegas does not think Scottie Barnes is an MVP candidate, much less is going to win MVP. I don't know a single reputable basketball source that thinks Scottie Barnes could be first team All NBA or even second team All NBA this year. I think I'm his biggest fan, and I project him to be third team, and I'm very prepared to be wrong. So what is it? What is it about guys like Scottie that you're not noticing? Because there is a period of his life, a very short period, where he really did look like a second team, first team All NBA kind of guy. And that was the 33-34 games with Siakam and OG in 2022, 2023, where, right before they blew everything up, and he looked really good. And I'm confirmed in saying that he's a much better player today than he was back then. So I want to tell you why I was going to make a Scottie Barnes video. Yesterday I was watching Thinking Basketball. I was listening to Thinking Basketball, and I was trying to sleep. Yes, some people count sheep. I listen to Thinking Basketball and other basketball podcasts as I'm trying to fall asleep, as some of you may listen to PENSARE Basketball when you're trying to fall asleep. I also have my podcast that I try to listen to when I'm falling asleep. And I was starting to listen to Thinking Basketball, and they were talking about the 25 greatest peaks of this century. And they talked about a couple players that have a lot in common with Scottie Barnes. One was Jason Kidd, and one was Draymond Green. And if you grew up in, you know, a late 90s basketball fan, at least, you saw both of them. And you saw them in good contexts and you saw them in bad contexts, right? Steve Nash is another one. Nobody thought Steve Nash was going to be an MVP when he was, picked in the middle of the first round out of Santa Clara. Nobody thought he was going to be an MVP or a first team All NBA type of guy when, he was traded to Dallas. And then, he became a starter and a very respectable point guard, but he was not in the upper echelon of point guards. And then suddenly he gets into D'Antoni's system in Phoenix and it's all bets are off. And he's an MVP, back to back MVP. And you can argue about the merits of those MVPs, but you cannot deny is that Steve Nash became a top 10 player, top 6 player in the NBA. And his impact on those teams was immense. Now, Scottie does not have a 1-for-1 comparison in the NBA. I've been trying for 5 years to find a good comparison for him. Here are some names that I believe are Scottie comps. They're not 1-for-1. And if I have to go for a 1-for-1, I'm going to be stuck here all day. But I'm going to give you some names that Scottie Barnes reminds me of these players. Okay. Y'all can, if you're watching this video back later, why don't you drop some names that he reminds you of if I miss any, or let me know which of these names you agree with the most. But I think it's a worthwhile comparison, thought to have. I understand the comparisons can sometimes be a little bit weird, especially when you're talking about like comparing 16 and 17-year-olds to Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. But when a player has played this much, these are good ones. These are good ones. And definitely players that I think are valid. I'm going to give you some very wide-ranging comparisons just to jog the conversation. I'm going to start at the point guard spot. A couple of big guards come to mind. 3 big guards come to mind. One is Jason Kidd, a player who was once called Ace Kidd and eventually learned to shoot, but never at a super high volume. A player who could drive offense and push buckets at the rim, but wasn't the one necessarily scoring at the rim. A player who ended up winning a championship later in his career, but ultimately did lead 2 Nets teams that had no business being in the finals out of a depleted East and to the NBA final. Never really got his complete fanfare. I don't think there wasn't a lot of hot sauce to his game, but there was a lot of speed and intelligence to his game. So I think the Jason Kidd thing is valid. Luka is there. There's a little bit of Luka in his game. It's a comparison that I've talked to with his trainer about as well. There's elements of it, right? Luka is a little bit less twitchy. He's a little strong. He likes to bully ball his way. Now, Scottie doesn't have anywhere near the craft of Luka, nor does he have necessarily the speed of Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd was a bullet, and he was also, both these players are incredible ball handlers. Scottie's not an incredible ball handler. So the comparison does fall flat. But what those 2 players have in common is they are both players who have been compared to Scottie's comparison, which is Magic Johnson. And that's the 3rd player I'll throw out here. That's a point guard. That's the point god, if you will. That is the OG greatest point guard of all time for some people, myself included. Now, if you are not familiar with 80s basketball, you completely missed the Magic thing. He's just a myth for you, right? Magic Johnson is just whatever, just some tall point guard who won some championships with the Lakers. But Magic's greatness was his versatility and his IQ. And what you're going to notice is that every single player I'm going to compare him to is really smart. They're not always the most physically gifted players, but they're dominant because they see the game 2-3 plays ahead. And every coach who's ever coached Scottie would tell you he has that gift, that he is just so insanely smart for his age. I watched a lot of young players play basketball. There are very few players in NBA history at 20 that I thought were smarter than Scottie Barnes. He is truly like a basketball savant. He sees plays, reads plays so far ahead that him and Fred were clashing on what Fred was supposed to be doing. And Fred's a really smart player. So Scottie is just a next level genius when it comes to basketball. And I think the Magic Johnson stuff is very valid. Now, Scottie's a lot twitchier, especially right now than Magic was when the Magic you remember. The Magic's command of the basketball and Magic's passing was on, I would say, a different level. I also think Magic was just a lot more aggressive with his scoring. He didn't have a lot of, off plays offensively. I would also say Magic was definitely nowhere near the defender Scottie is. So the comparison falls a little bit flat. And that's why a lot of people who use the Magic stuff also put a little bit of a slash to it and then they compare it to Pippen. So they say Pippen defense, Magic offense. If you could truly find a player who was Magic Johnson on offense and Scottie Pippen on defense, you really are talking about the best player of all time or damn near. You're talking about LeBron James. Now, I don't have a lot of shooting guard comparisons for him. He doesn't remind me of Vince. He doesn't remind me of Kobe. He doesn't remind me of T-Mac. He doesn't remind me of many shooting guards. But if there is one shooting guard who later, became a shooting guard but was initially a point guard, and that's Penny Hardaway, and that's the only player in the two guard, group that I'll throw out there. In terms of small forwards, there are a lot of Scottie comps. Jason Tatum is an obvious one. Very versatile defender. Tatum is a much better shooter. So I definitely understand why people would balk at that comparison. The body type is completely different. Tatum is a lot of torso and very little legs, right? Like they're both 6'8", 6'9", but where Scottie's hips are, Scottie's wingspan, his hands, it makes it difficult to be as shifty as Tatum, and Tatum isn't that shifty to begin with. So in terms of like how much polish and wiggle there is to their skill sets, I would say Tatum has them cleared. In terms of as a defender, I think they're very close. I think they can be very, very close. And I think half of what Tatum provides his team is his defensive impact. Many times when an Al Horford or someone had to go out, Tatum was able to slot into a 5. When Jaylen Brown's off the court. Here's something you may not realize. If you watch the Boston Celtics, if you study their analytics over the last couple of years, you'll notice that over a sizable sample of minutes, the Celtics are a better team with Jason Tatum on the court without Jaylen Brown than they are with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum together. And they're obviously a much better team with Jason Tatum on the court than they are with Jaylen Brown on the court. He is by far their best player. He doesn't always get credit for being the best player because he plays with another mega scorer whose game is a little bit maybe more sexy. But that's the thing with Tatum. He provides a lot of value that you don't see because he is very versatile. Positionally, defensively, he's very versatile. He's extremely valuable on that end. And I think that's where that comparison comes in. Jimmy Butler is another comparison, right? Now, Jimmy Butler is not like a mega scorer. He's not a player, who has consistent scoring volume. He also wasn't a great defender before he got to Miami. So Barnes at this point in his career is so much better than Jimmy Butler was at this point in his career. Like it's not close, not even remotely close. Butler has kind of mash to the basket type of, bully your way to the basket. Butler is also an insanely smart player. He's also a playoff riser. He has these clutch moments. He's also a very unwilling volume scorer. If Jimmy Butler starts 3 for 3, he's probably going to score a lot. If he starts 0 for 3, he's probably going to pass a lot. I think Scottie's a better passer. I think Scottie has I think Scottie's a better defender. And I do think Scottie's going to be a better player than Jimmy Butler. So that's my view on that. Grant Hill is a very ambitious comparison. Grant, prior to the injuries was on track to be the best player in the league. The closest thing that I've seen to Grant Hill is like LeBron James. Incredible with Detroit. It was when he got to Orlando and the injuries started to pile up that things really, really got bad for him. But prior to the injuries, Grant Hill would be an amazing outcome for Scottie Barnes. Grant was just a much more polished scorer, much more of a high volume, first option, clear first option. Grant Hill also got a lot of comparisons to Magic Johnson when he was younger. We continue on with Scottie Pippen, and I think this might be like the most popular comparison, maybe because they both have the name Scottie, and partially because I think Pippen was the perfect sidekick. What would Scottie Pippen have looked like as a first option, though? Well, we got a chance to see that. A couple of spots. One we got to see it when Michael Jordan retired. The Bulls were still a really good team. They were a 50-plus win team. They didn't win a championship, but they were still a really good team. Now, unfortunately, with Pippen, more people, focus on the lowlights. Like, I don't know if that's because social media and everything he's done post his career has made him more of a meme than an all time great. But they always talk about Tony Kukoc taking that shot over him quitting on his team and stuff like that. But don't get messed up here. He was at times the third or fourth best player in the league. Like, you could have a conversation with Michael Jordan, the 2, 3, 4 players underneath him that you could have conversations about as the second best player in the league: Scottie Pippen, David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone. That's it. If I'm talking mid 90s, those are the players. Okay. I'm not hearing anything about Shaquille O'Neal until about 1996. I'm not hearing anything about Alonzo Mourning ever. Dikembe Mutombo was not in the conversations. Patrick Ewing was not nearly as good as peak Scottie Pippen. He just provided a ton of value. Pippen's value is that he's a hybrid do it all. He can play center, he can play point guard, he can run the break, right? He's incredibly versatile defensively. He was a better defender than Michael Jordan, for sure. He always drew the hardest matchup, or almost always drew the hardest matchup. He just provided a tremendous release valve for Jordan, right? Saying Drexler. I'm not sure that Clyde Drexler was necessarily better. I think there's people who would say Clyde Drexler, Mitch Richmond, Reggie Miller. There's a lot of names that you could probably try to, tell yourself. I'm not sure. Some people wanted to have this conversation about Penny Hardaway in 1996. I'm not sure. Maybe I have to go back and watch a little bit more Clyde Drexler. Of course, I'm talking NBA only, because if I was talking in the world, certainly I'm putting Arvydas Sabonis in this conversation as well. But nevertheless, those are the best players in the world. Scottie Pippen was one of the 5, 6 best players in the world. At worst, one of the 5, 6 best players in the world. And if Scottie Barnes mimics Scottie Pippen's entire career trajectory at some point, because Pippen didn't win championships right away either, that would be a great outcome. To be the all-time greatest number 2, yeah, I think you take it. That's not better than Mitch Richmond's career. Mitch Richmond was a first option. Reggie Miller was the first option. Bradley Beal has been a first option. Damian Lillard's been a first option. None of those players have had a better career than Scottie Pippen. So I think, that's where the small forward stuff. There are a couple power forwards that I would like to, bring your attention to in terms of Scottie comps. One of them is actually one of my favorite players of all time, which is Rasheed Wallace. I do see some Scottie-isms in Rasheed. There is that post game. There is the size, the athleticism. There is that dog mentality. But there's also like the low volume scoring. Rasheed was never, ever going to score 30, but he could score 30 whenever he wanted. I think Rasheed was a better shooter. I think Rasheed was bigger. Obviously, he was bigger. It's an interesting thought. There's a little bit of Chris Webber. There's a little bit of Chris Webber in there. I think this is another comparison that people often draw because he's a good passer. Webber was the first overall pick, I think, in 1993. 1993, he was the first overall pick. He was considered to be a transcendent franchise, de facto first option out the gate, right? Like, teams were falling over themselves to draft this guy. He was initially drafted with thoughts that he would be a center, eventually moved more to the power forward. I think Webber's career, unfortunately, is defined by not winning a championship, and then, of course, that infamous, timeout call in for Michigan State, and that's tough. That's tough. And time again, I often found myself wondering if he was haunted by that memory, and that just kind of like it just kept coming up. Like, he just never really felt like a big time clutch player. So yeah, I'm saying a lot of negative things about Chris Webber. I apologize. Chris Webber was a hell of a talent, and at times probably the third best power forward in the league behind in his heyday, behind Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett. He was amazing. He's an amazing player, and in my opinion, probably should have won a championship if the refs did not job the Kings. In the early 2000s, I think in 2002, I think they win it. And the Lakers go home. But unfortunately, the league wanted a three-peat, so they got a three-peat. I think Chris Webber was amazing. And again, if Scottie Barnes turns into Chris Webber, he's going to need to become a much better post scorer. He's probably going to need to be a lot more assertive. And yeah, I think he's a better defender than Chris Webber right away. So there is a pathway to Webber right? Weber was never like a 30-point per game scorer, but he just gave you a lot of value between the rebounding, the passing, the scoring. That was a really great. He was just an incredible player to put around movement. And I think, they have some vision of that with him. In terms of centers, there are a couple of centers that remind me of Scottie Barnes as well. And there's two that I could argue are two of the five greatest centers of all time. And one is Bill Russell. Now, Bill's an interesting case because he's nothing like the second center. Like one is like the defensive element and the transition, but also the intelligence. And then the other one is just like an offensive, incredible offensive player. So in terms of Bill Russell, I mean, I put Bill Russell above LeBron James. People clown me for it all the time. I think he's just an amazing competitor. His teams were never good offensively. He was never the best offensive player on his teams. What he was the most incredible shot blocker and defender, I think, in league history. They didn't record block numbers back then, right? They didn't record block numbers, but some people would estimate that Bill Russell was averaging like 6 to 7 blocks a game, in the 60s. And just his incredible ability to push pace, his incredible ability to make his teammates better, his incredible ability to see the play ahead of the play. That is what made him so incredibly relentless as a defender and also as an offensive player. Like, even though he didn't have the greatest touch around the rim and he didn't have like some refined scoring package, he was just such a fierce competitor. He was able to, make other teams, the offensive dynamos, including guys like Will Chamberlain, very, very ineffective against him. He was able to disrupt your game plan. He was very active in the passing lanes. He was definitely a lot more mobile than centers of his day. And again, just a transition demon, an athlete. I mean, his athleticism was overshadowed by the fact that Wilt was such a great athlete and a better athlete, a bigger athlete. But at 6'9" ish, 6'9", 6'10", Bill Russell was truly like a unicorn, in terms of how quick he was, how fast he was, his, balance and coordination, recovery, and how well he was able to map out space. He was incredible. I also completely, have to bring up Draymond Green here. Draymond Green is the most favorable comparison to Scottie Barnes. It was the draft day comparison. And Draymond has a lot in common with point guards who can't shoot like Rondo and Kidd than he does with most centers. Draymond might be the best defender of the last 20 years. And I'm saying 20 years just because I want to get out of Tim Duncan's early 2000s. If I just have to look at who's the best defender, total career value, including durability, including success and everything, Draymond's probably it. What makes Draymond so great is what made Jason Kidd so great, is that even though their own scoring wasn't like necessarily amazing, right? I missed the player. I missed the player. Okay, I'm going to talk about Draymond and then this other player that I missed right after because I think they are probably the two best comparisons, but let's just continue on. The other center that I wanted to include is Nikola Jokic. Now, this is a comparison that has been made by a lot of people that are very familiar with Jokic's game, including a couple of people back home who, my friends that are real hoop nerds. They watch this guy and they think that Scottie reminds him of Jokic. Another guy who thinks Scottie reminds him of Jokic is Scottie's current coach, Darko Rajakovic. He sees a lot of Jokic in him as well. And the reason that you say this is not because Scottie has this otherworldly touch around the rim and he's the most efficient scorer in the post or whatever. I think the Jokic stuff is a little bit misguided, maybe. The only reason he's like Jokic or Russell Westbrook, if you want to make that comparison, is that he can, in theory, be one of those rare players who can average a triple-double. So in that case, why not compare him to Oscar Robertson? You know what I mean? Like, I get it. You know what I mean? He's a really great passer. I don't think he's Jokic level passer. He's a really good rebounder. He's not anywhere close, and he will never be a Jokic level rebounder. He's a good post scorer. I don't think he's ever going to be Jokic as a post scorer. I don't know if he's going to be Jokic as a scorer. At what point does the comparison fall apart when one player is just so decidedly better and will probably be better at all those things? Where Scottie provides value is exactly where Jokic does not provide value, which is defense. So if he's a more defensively slanted Jokic who loses 25% of his offensive powers, I get it. I think the reason that they compare him to Jokic, and maybe this is something that Bobby Webster's also bought into, because they brought in Bruce Brown. They're trying to build a lot of, similar pieces around him that you would typically want to put around Jokic. Like, think about this roster without Scottie Barnes, just plug in Jokic. You have a good roster. Like, I think they have this idea in their head that they have a Jokic-esque player. I don't think the Jokic one-for-one comparison is necessarily fair, nor do I think any of these comparisons are necessarily fair at this moment, but they're ideas because it's going to fall somewhere on the intersection of these players. Now, the two players that I really do like as Scottie comparisons are two, actually. Draymond Green and Kawhi Leonard. Now, I'm truly talking about two of the 5 best defenders of the last 25 years, easily. And very different offensive players, both of whom have championships, both of whom have been very important part of championships, one of whom has multiple finals MVPs as the team's first option and hit the best and most important shot in Raptors history. I think the comparison here is with Kawhi, it's where he can dominate, right? Kawhi is not the quickest, twitchiest athlete, but he is a lot lower to the ground than Scottie. He's a lot shiftier than Scottie in terms of his ball control. If Scottie can refine this part of his game, then he has the wide shoulders to attack just like Kawhi did. He has all the space in the world on a step back. He is a massive human being. He's taller than Kawhi. He's got larger strides than Kawhi. The separation that Scottie gets is really like Ingram-esque, right? Durant-esque in terms of his torso versus his lower body versus his hand size versus his arm. Like, the physics of Scottie Barnes are just so insane, and you have to see him up close to actually understand how do you stop this guy once he learns how to dribble. And look, you're not teaching him how to dribble. I'm not teaching him how to dribble. That's Brian. That's on Brian and Scottie and Darko and those guys. But you got to understand, like, sometimes you got to see something happen before it even happens, just to know that you're actually pushing towards the right direction, right? When you see a player like this and you see what he's able to do, given all of his considerable offensive limitations, always, when people describe Scottie, you would think the guy averages like 2 points per game. They're like, oh, you can't dribble, you can't shoot, can't score around the rim, can't get to the line, can't do this, can't do that, can't stay in purpose, man. It's like, how the fuck did he become an all-star then? How did he win Rookie of the Year? Like, he's so bad at so many things. How did he do all these things, bro? Like, how many players in NBA history played like 12 years, never won Rookie of the Year, never made an all-star team? Like, so many. It's insane. But it's so obvious, too. In the last interview that I did with Brian, he mentioned, and I believe he said 25%, that this was Scottie at 25%, and he was an all-star that year. And this is what I'm saying. If 25% is all-star, then 80% is MVP. It is definitively MVP. So another player you could definitely throw in here is Anthony Davis. So these are the players. So to recap, Jason Kidd, right? We talked about Jason Kidd, talked about Magic Johnson. There was a third point guard that we talked about that I'm forgetting right now. What the fuck did we talk about? Can someone help me? Who's the third point guard we talked about? Jason Kidd, Magic Johnson, and Luka. There we go. Because I wasn't thinking of Luka as a point guard. Jason Kidd, Magic Johnson, Luka Doncic. Right. Bill Russell as a center. Sorry, as a 2-guard, we had Penny Hardaway, potentially. As a small forward, we had Grant Hill, Jason Tatum. We didn't even talk about LeBron. We could throw LeBron in there. Kawhi, right? There's a lot of great players here, man. I think the worst player I talked about is Rasheed Wallace and Chris Webber. Wow. That's a very popular one, too. Giannis. Giannis should be in the point guard, power forwards thing as well. So what you're talking about really sounds like the weirdest player ever. If I told you, I want you to imagine that you don't know who Scottie Barnes is. Let's just say I'm telling you about this guy named Wilson, okay, let me tell you about this. There's a guy named Wilson. Why can't I think of a Wilson Towns? Okay, there's this guy named Wilson Towns. He is in grade 11 right now. So he's going to be eligible for the draft in a few years. He's got some offers from UNC, some offers from Florida State, some offers from Oregon, some offers from Duke, an offer from Kentucky. He's a very widely recruited player. You haven't heard of him. He reminds me of Magic Johnson, Andre Iguodala, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, Bill Russell, Nikola Jokic, Chris Webber, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's who he reminds me of. He reminds me of those players. Like, what the fuck is that player, bro? Think I'm describing like you think I'm describing a 2K character, not a real basketball player. That's the thing about Scottie. He's not a normal basketball player. There's nothing that I've walked. There's actually a comparison that I totally left out, and it's exactly who Scottie Barnes is. And it's so funny. And the only reason I don't say this comparison is because people think I'm talking about a scrub, and he's not a scrub. He's actually one of the greatest players of all time. And his name is Bobby Jones. And Bobby Jones was like a 1-for-1, almost perfect defensive comparison for Scottie Barnes. If you go watch Bobby Jones play, go pull up some highlights. Bobby Jones, probably not going to find full games, but if you watch Bobby Jones and you watch Scottie Barnes play defensively, it's very similar. Offensively, completely different story. Very different story. Scottie's a way better offensive player. So, you talk about players like this, but what is Scottie missing to get to a level, and why do most people not agree? Well, the one thing that he's missing is the refinement, right? Like Rashid was a very refined player. So it's like to get to the Kawhi, Giannis, like a few of these players are just way more athletic than Scottie. He's just not going to get there. LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's never going to get a 1-for-1 with those guys because those guys are just better vertical athletes, better twitch athletes. With Kawhi, with guys like Paul George, Jimmy Butler, there's just a lot of craft that's been put into their work. There's just that's time in the gym. There's nobody that I can take seriously on basketball who's going to tell me, as hard as Scottie works, he's never going to be Kawhi. Yeah, miss me with that bullshit. No, if he works hard, he will be Kawhi. Unlike Kawhi, he'll also be a really good. He'll be a really good passer too. The Bill Russell stuff. When you talk about Bill Russell, I don't think he's nearly that level of defender. I'm not saying he can't be. He's 24 years old. He's never really had a great defensive team around him. So maybe if Scottie Barnes is anchoring OKC's defense, he is the defensive player of the year. You get my point? Scottie is an amplifier. He's not the greatest floor raiser. He's not. He's not LeBron James. LeBron James could drag a bunch of bums in his prime. Scottie, he could drag a bunch of bums to the playoffs. We tend to value floor raising about like a lot. But what was Cade Cunningham, who was All NBA this year? What was he doing when he had Malachi Flynn as a teammate? What was he doing? He was missing the playoffs. What was Jason Kidd before he got to New Jersey? I mean, he was a great point guard. Don't get me wrong. He won Rookie of the Year, just like Scottie. He won co-Rookie of the Year with Grant Hill, if I'm not mistaken. But he wasn't considered like a superstar in like 1995, 96. Like we started to get that, like Jason Kidd peaked at like 29, 30. Those were his best seasons. That's relentless work. That's fixing the jumper. It's the same thing with Draymond. Like, how old was Draymond before he broke through? Like 24, 25, 26? Scottie's been 23 for every 23 or younger for every basketball game he's played, and he was deemed as a project. We said when he came in that he had a lot of work to do, that it was going to be, a long road, and he's going to do this. But we're seeing pockets. We're seeing bits and pieces of improvement all over the map. We're seeing improvements in the pull-up shooting last year. Yeah, sure, it's not good. Nobody's saying it's good, but it's an improvement, right? You got to start from somewhere. This is not stuff he's practiced before. What do you want? What do you want? This is not what he was doing in Montverde. This is not what he was doing with the Sharks. This is not what he was doing in grade school. I wish he had done this stuff. Maybe I wish he'd done this earlier. But you know what? There's a part of me that wishes he hadn't done this earlier, because no way in hell the Raptors are drafting him. You wouldn't have a chance to draft this guy. If he came into collegiate basketball for Florida State, okay, 20 times out of 20. If he was as good as he is today at the NBA draft, he's going over Cade easily, because he'd be dominating collegiate basketball right now. So the best way to explain it is Jalen Suggs was probably 55% done when he came out of Gonzaga. Cade was probably 55 to 60% done, right, when he came into the NBA draft. Jalen Green was probably 75% cooked when he came out of the G League Ignite. Evan Mobley and Scottie Barnes had so much further to go than these guys, just in terms of skill set offensively. But even with Evan Mobley, I remember watching tape of Evan Mobley at 16. He was easily a lot more refined with some of his skill set. At the same time, I'm watching Scottie Barnes when he was 16, high dribble. And I'm like, oh boy, that's bad. The high dribble is bad. The driving angles are bad. He's a transition athlete. I don't know if it'll translate to the half court. What happens when teams take it away? What happens when he goes up? And it's just like he gets stronger and stronger. And it's just like, okay, I guess he's morphing into more of a power forward, but I see him more of a point guard. He's just such a confusing player. And you can argue that at times his development maybe has been mishandled, but I think Darko's got it back on track. I really do. But the most important thing about his development is that he continued to see himself as that level of player. And again, if you missed it,
Yeah, you want MVP, man. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try my best. I want it all. I'm trying to win everything. I want to make it to playoffs. I want to be MVP, first team defense, DPOY. I want it all.
do you believe him? I believe him. I would really, really like him to not model himself after Karl Malone. Thank you very much. For reasons not basketball related. Okay, so here's the thing. I believe him. Scottie came out in his rookie season and he wrote down that he wanted to win Rookie of the Year, right? He said he wanted to dominate practices, that he wanted to destroy everybody in practice. He wanted to do this and do that. And he did. He did almost every single thing he wrote down on that piece of paper. He did. Some people, you take them at their word, man. You put in a very, very big target on your back. You publicly, you're not saying this privately at a dinner. You didn't say this to your girl. You didn't say this to your daughter. You didn't say this to your dogs. You didn't say this to your trainer. You didn't say this to your mom and your dad. No, you said this on a Twitch stream, knowing very well exactly how it would be clipped, that it would be discussed, that it would be trolled, that it would be, dissected. You're putting a target on your back, right? Because now if you come out this season on average 14 points per game, everyone would be like, MVP my ass, right? Doesn't strike me as someone who's just talking and bigging himself up, though. If he's saying it, that's fact. Now, I'll say this, a little deeper into the live right now, that there were some circumstances in Scottie's life that maybe contributed to him not having a solid season last year and also in year two. And you're going to say it's excuses because I'm not going to be able to, disclose the full details of what exactly happened behind the scenes. But I think a reasonable person could deduce what was going on with him in year two and also what was going on in year four. And Scottie's a rhythm guy. Like, I'm pretty sure if he didn't pick up a basketball for like a month and a half, he'd be like airballing free throws. Like he needs to play. He needs to stay connected. The most important thing here, however, is that he does need to continue to get stronger because that's his superpower. That is his superpower. The ability to score through people. You're not necessarily going to get past people. So you're going to have to use your intelligence. You're going to have to use your size. You're going to have to use your length. And you're going to have to use strength to get through people. You have to find an advantage. And that's the thing I'm trying to hammer home at. Every single player I described, almost every single one, has a superpower. Scottie doesn't have a superpower. He has a lot of powers, but no superpower. Change one thing about Scottie Barnes. Make him a bullet like Russell Westbrook. MVP right away, right? MVP candidate right away. If he was the bursty athlete that Russell Westbrook is, holy shit. Okay. Give him like Steve Nash's handle. Now where are we at? Oh my God. If he had a Steve Nash handle, give him Steph's jump shot, right? And it's just like, okay, I'm describing like some of the biggest advantages in NBA history, but what I'm trying to say is the rest of it ain't broken. Something's got to give though, right? If you could give him Nikola Jokic's strength or Shaquille O'Neal's strength, now I'm not saying he's ever going to be as strong as those guys, But that's the path forward. Strength in the mid post. And that's where you arrive at Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kawhi Leonard. That's how you arrive at those situations. I already said once he starts to draw double teams consistently, he's already solved the next step, which is passing out of those double teams. He already has that. Draymond Green and Jason Kidd, the reason that I brought those guys up is because I was listening to Thinking Basketball talking about them. And they talked about how people didn't always even agree that these guys were good at basketball. It's the weirdest thing that, sometimes you could have a debate at a barbershop and be like, Draymond Green's ass. It's like, Draymond Green's like the second most important player in the Warriors dynasty. People really don't. I swear, there's like a half the fan base, half the NBA fans think Draymond is a worse player than Klay Thompson. Half of them at the time probably thought he was worse than Andre Iguodala. They think he's a five. Yo, you don't know ball if you think, that he's the fifth best player, fourth best player in the Warriors. No, man. At best, he's a second. At worst, he's a third. He was always more important than Klay. Wasn't as flashy as Klay, wasn't as explosive scoring as Klay, but his value is so underrated. Jason Kidd was the same way. People just nitpick the fact that he didn't shoot jumpers. Rajon Rondo was similar as well. But these people have tremendous impact through their basketball intelligence, through their IQ. And the IQ part doesn't completely show up and manifest in like MVPs until you get the right pieces around these players, right? When you put the right pieces around Scottie Barnes, he's going to be so much better. And I think you've taken a very, very positive step this year, by the way. I just want to be clear. I think that you have given him a lot of talent with Ingram, Barrett, IQ, Yak. I mean, you've got 4 very capable finishers around you. You've got shooting behind you. You've got defense. You've got a stretch big for once, who's not a complete dud in terms of passing the basketball, and Sandro Mamukelashvili. I think this is about as good a roster as he's had in a really long time. And I think he's looking at it. I think he's looking at the roster. I think he's looking at BI saying, okay, we got some relief here. I can do some stuff off the ball. But now when I have the ball, I have real options here. Scottie's not necessarily pass first, right? He's been pass first because he's win first. Scottie's a win first player. And I think this is a debate we get into with LeBron all the time when people try to compare LeBron to Jordan or LeBron to Kobe or whatever. It's just like, well, Kobe would never pass that. And it's like, yeah, that's the point. LeBron passes it not because he's passive, but because he sees things that Kobe didn't. Like, Magic wasn't passive. Magic was creating passing angles. An interesting fact about Jason Kidd is that his team scored 10 points per 100 possessions more at the rim when he was on the court. But he wasn't the one scoring those possessions. How? Why? Manu Ginobili is, weirdly enough, another example that you would make for Scottie Barnes. That's the shooting guard example for Scottie Barnes. In fact, we had a guest on PS2, Sahil, who actually compared Scottie to Manu Ginobili. You see what I'm saying, though? Like, what a weird player am I describing? Manu Ginobili, Chris Webber. Luckily, I didn't compare him to Hakeem Olajuwon, man. I can compare him to every great player in NBA history at this rate. Again, I think Scottie's a weird player. I think he's very polarizing. And a lot of people on the panel have given me a lot of pushback saying he's not a very good player, that, this is Ingram's team now and la 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 la. I think a lot of this fan base is going to think this is Ingram's team. But I'm hoping that NBA voters will realize who the team's best player is. And again, it's kind of like when the Nets traded for Vince Carter, right? And Vince Carter started putting up 26, 27 points per game. Jason Kidd has never averaged 20 plus in his life. I think his highest scoring season was 18 points per game. That's not how basketball is played, though. Basketball is not played in the spreadsheets. Basketball is not played on your parlay watches. Basketball is about how does the team score with you doing what you do. Scottie does all these little off-ball things that Rasheed was known for, that Garnett was known for, that, someone like Bill Russell would do. Like, he's the sealer, he's the screener, he does all those little things. Nikola Jokic is like this too. But he's also got like this tremendous potential offensively because of, the growth of his jumper and the growth of that mid post and the simply like the geometry of the court and the physics of him, that there are paths to him being good. Like you just need one superpower. That's what I'm saying. And if your superpower is scoring from 14 feet, I'm not mad at it. Because if that's something that's going to get you doubled, then that's going to unlock your real superpower, which is passing out of double teams. Everything Scottie does right now hinges on his ability to do three very critical things. And I'll lay out the blueprint right here. Step one for Scottie, find a superpower. Find a superpower, which is to say, find a zone in which you must be guarded or you will score. And that you cannot be controlled reasonably with a single coverage. For Rasheed Wallace, this was the mid post. For Dirk Nowitzki, this was the mid post. For Nikola Jokic, this is the mid post. For a lot of great scorers, it's been a mid post, right? For some players, it's the long ball. Some players, it's right at the rim, right? Players have different superpowers. Shaquille O'Neal, his superpower, 4 feet and in. Shaq, 25 feet. Don't have to worry about him. Not a superpower there. So put yourself, find a superpower, find a place on the court where you are significantly above league average at scoring and are able to score on any single coverage they throw at you, because you're not going to have the other team's best defender on you initially to start out the season. That's the first step. Step number 2, refine your handle to the point where you can do what you want with the basketball on the court and navigate places, pockets, space correctly. Now, there's a lot of examples of big playmakers with long arms, and they're not usually good ball handlers. Okay. They can be better ball handlers than Scottie, but they're not Anthony Edwards. They're not Jason Kidd with the basketball. Brandon Ingram is a player that comes to mind. There are many times where Brandon Ingram in the open court is like dynamic with the basketball. But when Brandon Ingram faces like tight spaces, the long arms and just the physics of how he bounces the basketball can sometimes result in him getting picked off. This is always going to be an uphill battle. So the advantage on offense becomes the disadvantage on defense. Scottie would be a much better ball handler if he had a 6'11" wingspan than he is with a 7'3" wingspan. He'd be a better shooter if he had slightly smaller hands, but he'd be a worse defender. You see what I mean? So all these superpowers that help you defensively are the same things that are sort of slowing you down offensively, and you need to find a way. Like the long legs, like the super short torso and the long legs, this is exactly what helps you in the open court and exactly what hurts you in the half court, right? Shorter legs will help you beat your defender off the dribble. Shea is quite proportionate in terms of his lower to upper body. It's like he can get really low to the ground. How low to the ground can you get when your legs are as long as, Dirk Nowitzki's legs? It's not a lot of place you can go. It's harder. So it's a very underrated part or underrated discussion about Scottie that I don't think most people have had. I've never really heard an intelligent person talk about this other than myself. But the fact that his legs are so insanely long and his arms are so insanely long and his hands are so big, it makes him more center adjacent. But unfortunately, he's not 7 feet tall, so you don't necessarily have the same advantage that centers have. So he's more like somewhere between an oversized guard and an undersized center, and people just call him a small forward. You know what I mean? He is one of the weirdest basketball players you've ever seen in your life. You really don't, you cannot find another player who looks like him. You're talking about a unicorn. Now, it's funny, actually, there are one-armed basketball players. There are one-legged basketball players. There are 450-pound basketball players. We don't call them unicorns, though. We call Wemby a unicorn. Why? Because his unicornisms or his, super traits, Shaq is a unicorn, LeBron's a unicorn, because their super traits result in advantages on the court. Scottie's a unicorn because I've never seen a player who looks like him. I've never seen a player who plays like him in all entirety. Like, that's why I have to compare him to 14, 15, 18 different players, because there's no one-for-one comparison, right? It's easier to make a LeBron comparison than it is to make a Scottie Barnes comparison. It's easier to make a Pippen comparison than it is to make a Barnes comparison. Magic is the only player where I think like when he came to the league, people were like, I don't even know what the fuck this is. Because they've never seen anything like it before, ever. He had a point guard and a center's body, and he could play center. And he started at center when he jumped ball at center as a rookie, and then won a championship. My point is, it's a very weird type of player, and the weirdness will only be celebrated when it translates to wins and once it's been pulled together. So again, the Scottie blueprint. Step one, find a dominant zone. Step two, refine your handle to the point where you can successfully navigate. We're not expecting you to be Allen Iverson or Steve Nash. You'll never be those guys as ball handlers, but that's okay. You don't need to be. When you're this size, you just need to be able to get to your spots. That's it. Kevin Durant is a good enough ball handler for what he needs to do at his size. Steve Nash, Fred VanVleet, these guys, they need to be able to dribble the basketball because they are vertically challenged players. Scottie does not need to become Allen Iverson with the basketball in order to be successful. He does not need to become Steve Francis and Baron Davis. He doesn't need to have those handles because he's already 6'8", 6'9". So get good enough with the handle to be able to get to your spots in the court. And then the third thing is play balls to the wall all the time. And this is the Kevin Garnett trait, that high motor Russell Westbrook trait. This is the Draymond trait. If you want to truly win MVP, defensive player of the year, first team all defense, first team all offense. I can't remember the last player who did this. You really, really need to do that, right? You need to be locked in every possession defensively. You need to have an insanely high motor. You need to come into the season in the best shape of your life. There's no question you're not allowed to get tired. There's so many games where Scottie has had moments which give you hope, and against some really good competition too. Like it takes a pretty fierce competitor to posterize. Like it takes a pretty fierce scorer and a pretty fierce, dude to be able to do some of the stuff that he's done. Like, the big fourth quarter against Brooklyn, the big fourth quarter against the big game against Boston, in the in-season tournament. There was the huge fourth quarter against Giannis and the Bucks. There's the lockdown effort that we saw last year against Giannis, where, there's the lockdown effort we saw against Steph Curry. There's that performance against LeBron James, in crypto. Like there's so many moments. And it's just like, man, can we stitch these together? Can we get, like, we've seen the glimpses. The glimpses are awesome. They're amazing. Can you cut out those 12-point, 4 rebound, 3 assist games? Because Lord knows, Scottie has like 6, 8, 10 of those in every single season. Some of them are even worse than 12 points. Some of them are like 6 points, 4 points. Like, can we get rid of those games? Can we get rid of these 8, 9-point games? Like, he's doing a much better job last year, but can we do an even better job? Right? Now, I think Scottie's going to be a much better player this year. I would bet anything I own that he's going to be better than he was last year. How much better comes down to him successfully implementing. He is above league average because the passing is there, right? I don't need to worry about, you need to learn basketball. No, Scottie Barnes knows basketball. Scottie Barnes is a basketball genius, so he gets that part. It's the defense. It's like the motor. I don't need to teach Scottie Barnes how to cut off an angle. He knows how to do it. Like his mapping of the court offensively and defensively is so impressive. Like you watch, like if you are a basketball nerd like me and you actually suffer through one play watch through of the Raptors and then go back and you're like, you know what I need to do with my evening? I need to watch this whole game again, and I need to slow down these certain parts at half speed or quarter speed and just watch it through. You'll see how often he'll notice that his defense, that his teammate has lost his defender before his own teammate realizes he's lost the offensive player. Like if Grady Dick is about to get clipped on a screen, Scottie sees it and he is already starting to pre-rotate to help. Like there's so many things that he does that are so impressive offensively and defensively that if he could just do these other 3 things, he really would launch himself into an MVP conversation. I think there's some very different expectations of him this year among Raptors podcasters and people who cover this team. I think some people are really, really high on him. I think some people are expecting him to, probably push for All NBA, second team, third team. I think some people are expecting him to take a really big reduced role. They're expecting him to fall back in the pecking order, be more of a third option, embrace the Draymond destiny that he was apparently born to play. I think it doesn't matter what we think. I think it matters what Scottie thinks, what Darko thinks, what his team thinks. And from what I've heard, from what I'm seeing, it seems like everything Scottie's saying is I'm not I'm not second fiddle. How many second fiddles won an MVP? Steve Nash was not a second fiddle. He was not the team's leading scorer. Jason Kidd was finished second in MVP voting, I think, a couple of times. He was not the second fiddle. He was the star. Scottie Barnes sees himself as the star of this team. He owns that. That's his. And until further notice, I think he would be wise to accept that as well. But yeah, hopefully this has been a meaningful discussion. I think Scottie comps are always fun. I resent the idea of the Draymond thing because while I value Draymond more than most, I just hate how optically I hate what that makes it sound like. Scottie's much bigger than Draymond. He's a much better finisher around the paint than Draymond. He has better touch than Draymond. And according to Draymond himself, if you ever want Google what Draymond said about him, he's like, yeah, he reminds me of myself, but that's his floor, right? Like he can take this shit so much further. And it's just like, well, if Thinking Basketball thinks Draymond Green is the 23rd best player of the last 25 years, what does Draymond look like fully unlocked with more athleticism? You know what I mean? But it's just like, I don't think Thinking Basketball would think Draymond was even a top 60 player if he didn't play with Steph Curry in the Warriors motion offense. So to collect my thoughts here, to summarize everything for everybody who's been kind of listening to me rant and ramble, there are no sufficient or obvious comparisons for Scottie Barnes, but there are like 20 comparisons you can mold together, which is interesting. Two, it's great to hear Scottie has really high hopes for this season. I think we all, at least in this channel, really are rooting for him to carry out on those. Three, Scottie has a 3-step approach or 3 steps to unlocking this level of MVP, first team All NBA type of potential. And ultimately 4, that as always, it's going to come down to him. And it's going to come down to him. And I like what I heard from him. So that's going to be great. James saying CMB is more Draymond. No, I don't think so. I get what you're saying. I get it. But there's something that Samson Folk said in one of his podcasts, the Pull Up Trade podcast, and he said CMB has a lot of RJ Barrett offense in him in terms of the driving. And I actually agree with that. Like if you watch Colin Murray Boyles of South Carolina driving the basketball, there's no Draymond at all there. CMB is an incredible touch. Like he is not Draymond. I promise you, he is not Draymond Green. But I understand why people keep making the comparison. If he becomes Draymond on defense, the Raptors are sitting very, very pretty. Want to give a big shout out to members like Alexander B. Thank you so much. Mr. Canada, thank you very much. James, thank you for becoming a member of this channel. It goes a really long way. I mentioned this before. I'll mention this again. YouTube has a limited offer for the next 25 days. It's not an offer for you. It's an offer for me. So this is very selfish of me to say this. But for every single membership, every new member we get, there is a $30 bonus for me. So I'm pushing it hard. I have big goals financially this year, and I apologize if it's a little bit annoying. Shout outs to you, sir. And yeah, thank you guys. And I also want to give a big shout out to our 5 VIP members, which is Susan Garrett, Springer, Stanley Kurian, Pepperjack, and Karen Hall. Thank you very much. And a reminder again, if you haven't watched the one-on-one with Chuck Swirsky, it was a really dope conversation. I'll say like a minute's piece about this. Like when I was young, I really wanted to talk to all these people, right? I really did. I did. Oh, well, how nice of you. Pepperjack has gifted 10 Pensare Basketball memberships. Please go grab them. I'm gonna stay here until y'all are able to grab these memberships. You can cancel after a month. But W to you, man. That's amazing. Making it real easy. Somebody get Sheridan a membership. Well, Sheridan can claim one right here. Now, Pepperjack, if you want to let people know, how do they claim this? I've never claimed a free membership. I've never had a chance to do that, but I think you just click on it. James said 300 more bucks. Let's go. Yes, the 300 bucks work if you claim the membership. Unfortunately, it's random. So it just assigns people randomly. I don't know that. Military Man saying, thank you so much. Military Man has become a member. Shout outs to you. Damn. That's dope. Y'all can cancel anytime you want. I plan to put a lot of work to make sure memberships are worth your money. To VIP members, you know, we've done a couple of videos so far. We've done early members. We will eventually start doing a couple of members only content. Like, we will do this. And it's not to squeeze anyone out. It will never be a post game live or anything like that. It's largely just to provide it's to provide value for people who are providing value to me. I think that's a fair trade-off. So yeah. It's cool to see how much the membership will help you grow. Absolutely. Actually, I wanna actually leave this on a good note. Actually, I need your help. So I need your help to understand something. So hang on one second. I sent myself this email last night. So I wanted to do a membership. Sorry, not a membership. I wanted to do a members video, but you know, it could be a members first video that'll be unlocked a month later or a week later or something like that. But hang on one second. I wanted to pull it up here. Here we go. So this is an idea. I was brainstorming this yesterday, and it's called Deeper Basketball Concepts. I wanted to make a video about this. And I'm curious if, to the members out there and maybe even to the non-members who just have good ideas, things that you wanted to see covered, these are 15 things that I wanted to cover in depth in a series of videos throughout the year, maybe even like 3 per video, maybe all of them in a mega video. I'm not sure yet, but I got to start writing and working on this. So these were deeper basketball concepts that I don't think have been properly explained on this channel or many other channels. And these are the following. So portability, 2 points is not 2 points, the famous LeBron James quote. Rim pressure. I think people have done videos on rim pressure and stuff, but I think with video examples, I can take it a step further. Screens and seals, the value of offensive rebounds and why offensive rebounds are so important. Defensive versatility, scoring gravity, and court geometry expanded. So something that I've talked about, but never fully like illustrated. And I think with a little bit of graphics, I could actually make this point better. The value of tough shot makers, movement shooters. So like showing clip by clip, understanding what movement shooters do to the other players on the court. So significantly looking at like, how does Steph Curry impact the other 9 players on the court, and just taking like a snapshot overview of like how players like Grady and IQ, not saying that either player is like Steph Curry, how those players can succeed, the advantage of big playmakers, bad defenders versus non-defenders. So trying to distinguish between, you know, the Trae Youngs of the world and the RJ Barretts of the world. Player archetypes ranked. So going through like 12 to 15 dominant archetypes of players that we see in the league, and just kind of like going through what is the most valuable archetype and player. Spacing, debunked. I want to talk about the best synergistic duos. So like looking at like in a lab, if I can create the 2 perfect basketball players to play off of each other, which 2 archetypes would be best to work together, and then kind of like doing like this like that. Air taxing. Yeah, air taxing, and maybe looking at, I've also thought about watching some old Raptors games. You know, again, can't do it on YouTube, but we'll have to do it off of YouTube. So private membership stream or whatever for VIP members, and just being able to break down Vince Carter's game, watching the entire game, breaking it down, commentary, etc. So yeah, these are all ideas that I have. I'm taking this seriously, guys. I am. Like, I have a my girlfriend would tell you that I have a very insanely guilty conscience, and I probably sometimes have a little bit of a low self-esteem. So when somebody is saying like, I'm going to become a member of your channel, I'm just like, whoa, like, I'm a member of so few channels. Like, I have to provide value to this person. I can't just, I have to do something here. I have to earn this membership. It's not quite like a subscription. I appreciate subscriptions, but subscriptions are free. I am subscribed to hundreds of channels that I have not watched a video from in a year. I'm sure there are people who have subscribed to this channel who've never watched the video for a year, but I do think memberships take it to a different level. I've never really considered memberships prior to this year, and I started seeing what Player's Choice is doing with memberships. They have Hall of Fame membership tier. I don't know how much Hall of Fame membership is on PC, but apparently you get to come up every Friday and talk on the panel, which is such a dope thing. If you have disposable money, like why wouldn't I would totally do that, So yeah, it's cool. So yeah. Anyways, I'm out of here. Shout outs to D Smoke. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. And huge shout out to Pepperjack, who is already, by the way, a VIP member, who has already, by the way, gifted a whole bunch of memberships. And I believe last time you gifted 25. Am I mistaken? It was 25 or 15. I think you gifted 15 memberships last time, and now you gifted 10 more. Shit. In the words of Jordan, shit. That's a lot, man. That's very, very generous of you. You certainly don't, but please don't feel any pressure to have to do this. Like, that's very, very kind of you. Thank you so much. All right. I am pleased to tell you it was 10 last time. So it's 10 and 10. But you see what I mean? You saying 10, but I remember it as 15 because it felt like 15. You know what I mean? Okay. Buddy Terrifico said, I'd get a membership to support, but I'm in Bolivia and get paid in Bolivian currency, so I'm broken. Well, hopefully you are able to get a free membership the next time. I don't know. It is, thank you guys so much. And also shout outs to you from Bolivia, man. That's super dope. I had a roommate who was actually one of my best friends, and he was half Bolivian, so that's cool. All right. I'll talk to y'all later and enjoy, and let's go Scottie Barnes MVP. Do you know how much shit I'm going to talk if Scottie Barnes wins MVP, yo? You have any idea? If you think I'm insufferable now, like I will be calling into every show. I'll be like hitting up content creators. I had this entire like folder of receipts. I'll be building a documentary. I might make a documentary about these people, man. People will have to hide. They will have to go into WITSEC. These people will go into WITSEC. If you see what would happen, oh my God, the people who've been talking shit about Scottie Barnes will go into witness protection to get me off their ass for how much shit I'm going to talk about them. Oh my God. Maybe Scottie Barnes shouldn't win MVP. Shout out to Scottie. Please don't win MVP. I'm going to, they say like people show you who they are in the worst of times and the best of times. Y'all about to find out I'm pretty petty. I don't think I'm going to handle it with grace. I really don't. I'd like to think I will, but I don't think I will. So shout out to Scottie. Go get MVP. Go get DPOY. Go get everything, man. Peace.